So carrying on with page 4 from the manual, we've mounted the cylinder set onto the chassis. Now I had a bit of a problem with this in that those screws, although they're shown going in this way in the manual, they're actually tapped to go in that way, and of course you can't get a screwdriver in. So I ended up re-tapping this bit and clearance holes in this back plate and putting in 3mm screws. It's also a little bit of a struggle to get the reversing block on its mounting bracket, but there we are, it's all on there now. So then we're moving on to the actual reversing lever, which is these parts here. I've got all the selection together, including washers. There's some washers and some little E-clips, and I'm just going to go on and do the assembly on that. So I've assembled up the reversing lever and done all the little E-clips, which are a bit of a pain. I find it quite useful to have a nice firm surface to work on doing the E-clips, and a little pair of pliers to just slip them over. Now I've taken the middle out of the reverser, so that needs to go back. It needs to be scrupulously clean, plus a little bit of extra oil, and just wiggle it back into its slot there. And then I'm going to put the bolts in for the reversing handle. And I've got a little trick here. I've put some masking tape doubled over on the end of the nut runner and stuck the bolt onto it. So now I can get the bolt started quite easily. There's adjustment here on these two bolts, and it wants to be adjusted so that you've got a little line there, and there's about 2mm to mid-gear position, and when you put it in forward gear position, reverse gear position, that line should line up with the end of the block. So to complete page 4 on the manual, I've got the lubricator. I put an O-ring to seal the cap, and this is the spot where it's going to go on the foot plate, so the steam will go in through that little banjo bolt from the boiler here, but the manual says don't fit this yet, but at least we know where it goes. We're ready for an air test now. What I've done here, I've put on the exhaust pipe onto the inlet side, and I put a little bit of oil down it just to make sure everything's properly lubricated, and then run some air into it and see what happens. That's going quite nicely. I don't think it's going quite so well in this direction. That's a little bit chuggy. And I've got a loose connection there as well. You see some oil coming out. So I've had a go at retiming the eccentrics and setting the valves, and it's been run in a little bit, so we've got it running a lot more smoothly. Let me just demonstrate. So that's running quite nicely forward, and then go into reverse. And she's doing pretty much the same thing. If you have to favour one direction more than the other, forward is when you're looking this end of the engine and it's going clockwise. And I just check that against the truck. So going that way, clockwise looking this way, should send the engine forward. It is possible to time the eccentrics 180 degrees out, so when you've got it in reverse it goes forward, and when you've got it in forward it goes reverse. But you've only got to change the eccentrics 180 degrees to get it back the right way. It's also possible to get one eccentric in forward and the other in reverse, and the engine won't go at all. So if you get that where the engine seems to be straining itself and not running, try turning just one eccentric 180 degrees and you should get back to where you were. So that pretty much completes the engine side, and next we're going to be looking at the boiler. So we've unwrapped the boiler and taken the little metal baffle out of the front of the smoke box. Started doing the boiler fittings. Safety valve, that's an easy screw-on job. The Goodall valve, this one allows you to fill the boiler even when it's in steam, and it's also the water filler for actually running, so that comes in and out quite often. Next was a little blank that goes on the side of the turret here, and it says use sealant. Well, I've used PTFE tape. I used just a little whisker of tape around those. And then the regulator, well, that's got an O-ring there which needs fitting, and a little grub screw on the handle. So assemble the handle, put in the grub screw, a little bit of oil on the O-ring, and it should go into its regulator body, and then you can just close and open the regulator like so. I've fitted up the pressure gauge, and I've also put in the burner with its little collar, and I'm just coming onto the water gauge. The water gauge is a bit of a box of tricks. There's about 20 bits to it. So I've started off by doing the bottom part, and I've had to file a little bit away here to clear the burner, and I've assembled this blowdown, which includes a little stainless steel ball, and you can see it's got its own banjo bolts to go on with. So that's the bottom of the unit fitted, but still fairly loose. The next job then is to get the O-rings over the glass, and the O-rings themselves have to push down right into the gland nut, and to do that we use a cocktail stick. I'll do them one at a time. So I'm pushing that O-ring right down the side of the glass into the union nut, and I'll do the same again with the other one. A little bit of lubrication can help these if you're not sure whether they're going in easily or not. So with the bottom fitting in place, the glass has to go in, and the gland nut can then be screwed down onto the bottom fitting. Which is a bit of a fiddle. And once that's in, you can look at the top fitting with its banjo bolt. That one goes in through there, and the little nut, actually I'll put the nut over the glass first. And then that should all align. So top banjo bolt. These bolts need a little bit of sealant on them, and I tend to use just a small strip of PTFE tape wiped round, and then the nuts and the fittings can go on. So it's a bit of a fiddle, but you get there in the end. So we moved on to stage 7, and I've done the sand dome, the bell, and the main steam dome. Sand dome has an arm that sticks out on the right hand side. Steam dome has a couple of holes for something to go on there, don't know what yet. But the rest of the fittings are all in, and I'm going to test the boiler to make sure there's no leaks. So I've filled it up completely with water right to the top, and now I'm going to pump some more water in through the Goodall valve, and you can see the pressure gauge going up. So we're holding pressure, and if you put too much pressure on, the safety valve goes, which is what's happening at the moment. But there's no leaks on any of the fittings, so that's all good. Even when I take the pump out, the pressure's still holding, just gradually dripping back.